What up, fans and haters? It's One Sir Grove OSGOE, working on this screenplay here, DJ with an Uzi. So, the trailer is now up. It's been up and running for some time, and I wanted to go ahead and take some time here to explain the synopsis. So, you're always going to have people who, even though they hear about something, they see something, they read something, they think that they know what it is that they're seeing, hearing, reading. They think they know. And so it's a phenomenon of the human mind and human consciousness. You see a movie, you think you know what it's about, then you go back and then you later see someone explain it in a YouTube video, for example, and then you think, oh my God, I saw the movie, I heard the audio, I watched it, I heard from other people who I thought we were all on the same wavelength and we understood it, but apparently we didn't understand it. That's the premise of this screenplay, this movie here, DJ Wood and Uzi. I wanted to write, script, a movie unlike any other sci-fi, techno, thriller, military grade, sci-fi, spy thriller, time travel, thriller, technological movie that you've ever seen, that you've ever read. I wanted to write something that was in some ways an homage to many different movies and storylines, but in and of itself, completely different than any way it's ever been done ever before. So in order to do that, one has to be careful in the writing process because you have to scan the web and you have to see, has anyone ever come up with these different ideas before? So this has been multiple years in the works, writing into the early wee hours of the late night and early morning, and I just, with the craft of writing, I had to really scan the entire internet and determine whether this has been done before. And I believe it has never been done ever before. So, this is DJ with an Uzi, the synopsis explained. So what you have, and again, keep in mind, when you see the movie, people will still, some of them, even though they think they know, even though this is being explained, they'll be like, man, what the fuck? Like, what was that? Like, how? I don't understand. Like, what the fuck? So let me explain it to you, man. It's New York, but a parallel universe of New York. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, Grove, got it. It's a parallel universe of New York. There have been plenty of movies where they're parallel alternate universes, right? Okay, granted. But keep in mind what I'm saying here for the official record. This is a parallel universe of New York. So this takes place in not the New York that you know. The movie is set in not the New York universe of which you currently know and understand. And in that universe, in that parallel universe of New York, there are gang activities in some areas, as one would find on this timeline, in this world, in this universe. So, there are gangs in some areas. And in those areas where there are gangs, in the parallel universe of New York, you find out that some of those gangs are not what they seem. In that one of the gangs isn't really a gang. It's not really a gang. But you're led to believe that it is. And again, this is in a parallel universe of New York. So, next, you have a group of childhood friends, and these are high IQ kids. These kids are nerds. They're geeks. They're kids with high IQs. What one would expect characteristically of nerds, geeks, the nerd-geek stereotype. You have a group of kids who come together because they're brainy. They're brainy, they're geeky, they're nerdy, and so they click up. They form a group, and they hang out and they do what kids do on one hand, and then on the other hand, they have high IQ. So they're doing these kind of nerdy, brainy things that kids do. And who with high IQs. They're doing science experiments, and they're playing video games and chess and all these different things that one would expect of a group of nerds, geeks. So far, seems straightforward, right? But keep in mind, this is in a parallel universe, okay? So that's the thing, is some people, even though this is being explained to them, they're gonna see this and they're gonna think that this is the Earth that they know. It's not. So this is a parallel universe that we're talking about here. So you've got the gangs over here, and then you have these brainy, high IQ, nerdy kids over here. These kids, they're always fucking around with computers, they're taking them apart, they're putting them back together, together anything that's technology-based, any electronic device. They're just ripping shit apart, putting it back together, trying to figure out how shit fucking works in the universe, right? They're doing prank calls on the phone, pranking people, they're fucking pushing buttons just kind of randomly, dialing people and shit. And at some point, they realize by way of phone freaking, playing around with the telephone system, that one day they notice something odd about one particular random string of numbers that they dial. So they get together and they're talking about it. And dude's like, yo man, I was doing this thing on the phone and it was like, you know how we're always fucking doing this shit to like prank and shit or whatever, right? He's like, yo, check this out. And he shows them this thing where when you enter these digits over the telephone system, the dial tone that you hear, it disappears. I'm talking about the old school, okay? So it's set in the 80s, revealing that this is the 1980s, but in a parallel universe of the 1980s. So dude discovers back in the 80s that when he picks up the phone and he dials this set of digits, that the dial tone that's ordinarily there until you make a call, it disappears and it's gone. It vanishes. There's no dial tone, and it's just dead fucking black space. And the dial tone doesn't resume. You don't hear the signal that one would ordinarily hear if the phone is off the hook. The off the hook signal, it's not there. There's no off the hook signal. You can enter the string of digits, the set of digits, and it's just blank dead space, seemingly indefinitely. And they're like, well, what is this? Like, how long can you keep it off the hook? Like, is there anyone there? And then at some point, when the kids are playing around with this code that was dialed randomly at first, all of a sudden, after so many minutes have gone by, they hear someone pick up a phone on the phone and start to dial a telephone number. And they're sitting there like, are we fucking hearing someone? They're just looking at each other like, hold up, man, what? Is there someone's dialing? And they realize that they're tapped into some kind of backdoor program that allows them to listen to telephone calls. They're freaking out like, what the fuck? What is it? What is this? And so at first you're thinking, well, it's just some shit that the telephone company has to monitor the telephone grid. But then you're like, well, would the telephone company have that? Then you're like, what do I know about the telephone company? What do I know about line engineers? What do I know about line technicians? What do I know about radio, telegraph, telephone, facsimile? What do I know about radio broadcast? What do I know about the telephone companies? Can they do that? Naturally, they would have a back door, right? Where you could, but then you're like, but if they had this random string of numbers that people could just fucking dial accidentally, then people would find out about it. Now keep in mind, this is not only a parallel universe, but in this parallel universe where this is taking place back in the 1980s, similar to the universe of this timeline, there's no internet. Okay, so that's similar. So it's not like someone could discover this thing, this seemingly random set of numbers, and then they could post it on the internet, because there was no internet then on that timeline either. So these kids figure this shit out, and they're like, what the fuck is this, man? Why would this exist? So they're thinking mathematically that it's probably not some kind of telephone company backdoor, because mathematically speaking, people would just stumble upon it and they would be doing the same shit that these kids are doing. So they're like, so if is it a glitch? So they're playing around with it for some days and some weeks actually. And something dark occurs in that they're found out. And then when they're found out, you're wondering, well, were they found out all along? You're like, was some entity monitoring them, some government shadowy entity, and why would they be allowed to do this thing that they were doing by listening to all these different telephone calls for all this time? Why would any system controllers allow for them to have access to this thing? So that's the point in the movie where they discover the bizarre cryptographic code system hidden on the telephone grid network. So they were able to crack this code, because being video game computer geeks that they are, a couple of them have been in Cub Scouts. They all are advanced for their ages in math and science in their high IQ school programs that they're in. So fucking around with codes and ciphers, playing around with the phone grid, they're starting to put the pieces of this phenomenon together and realize that there's some really fucking weird shit going on. And not only that, they soon discover that in addition to these monitors, seemingly, I'm not going to give it away, but this entity that's on the phone with them, that is monitoring them, that begins to communicate with them by playing with them in a way that leads you to believe that it's just kind of playing a game with them, but you find out it's It's not really a fucking game at all. But these voices, they start off appearing to be these random callers. And they're on the phone talking to themselves. They're having these seemingly random callers that the kids have been listening to on the phone. One day, these individuals, these folks, they get on the phone. You can hear the phone picked up in the background, which is odd because you're like, well, if you're monitoring some back door to the telephone grid, how would you be able to hear someone in a room pick up the phone? Because it's almost, what you're hearing, it's almost as if you're able to hear someone pick up, physically grab the phone in this dead black space environment. So when you're tapped into this back door, quote, quotes, back door, because you find out it's different kind of back door than you're thinking about in the technical computer hacking sense of it all. How could you hear someone physically, like, in a room, like, shuffling around and moving shit around? You're like, well, is it a microphone? Like, what's going on here? Like, you can fucking hear people moving paper and shit around and moving items around, objects, and then picking up the handset and physically dialing. So that's another hint, that's another key that there's something fucking bizarre going on here that goes beyond someone just tapping into the telephone grid. So you hear that after, say, a week of the kids having access to this portal. And so these voices that you hear, dude in the background fucking moving shit around, shifting some objects, he picks up the phone, he dials, and then he hears his buddy get on the phone. The kids have learned that they can talk to folks on the phone too, because they've been having communications, and I haven't told you that, but I'm telling you now. They find out that they can talk to people on this phone system, quote, system, because it's not really a system. The kids are like, hey, what's up, guys? And the dudes are like, huh, what? Is there someone on the fucking phone? Well, what's going on here? And he's like, yeah, Steve, I heard that too. These dudes, it's a ruse. They're system controllers, and they're fucking with these kids. They're playing them. They were pretending to have the one dude dial, called his buddy, they're having a conversation, and the kids think that they're pranking these guys. And then at some point very quickly, the dudes are like, hey, are you guys on the line with us? And the kids are like, yeah. And the kids decide to tell these dudes. They're like, they've been playing this game, and for some reason, they just fucking randomly just decide to tell these dudes, yeah, hey, listen, man, we figured something out. It's like a party line or something. And the guys are like, huh? Really? Well, how did you do it? So the kids get scared, and they don't want to reveal their secret. They're not going to fucking tell anybody how they did it. They're not going to give them the back door passcode. So being the kids that they are, nerds, geeks, high IQ, fucking pranksters, they immediately respond with some outrageous fucking claim. They're like, yo, man, we're using computers. And the guys are like, computers? And the kids are like, yeah, let's ramp this up and take the story to the next level. So they're like, yeah, we got a supercomputer here. And the guys are like, a supercomputer? What? How do you have a supercomputer? How old are you guys? And keep in mind, these are system controllers and they're playing these kids. And keep in mind, this is a fucking parallel universe. The audience that doesn't pay attention to what I'm explaining, they may even read the synopsis, they forget and they don't know, because that's the way that the story is designed. You're led to think, and the whole time through the movie, well, at least say halfway through the movie, relatively speaking, and I'm not gonna give it away, but yeah, you think that it's the regular Earth that you know. These dudes, they're like, what do you mean? You're kids and you have a supercomputer? And the kids are like giggling and they're like looking around and they're like, yeah, we got a supercomputer. And they're like, well, how'd you get that? Right? That's what these men are asking these children. And keep in mind, these are pre-pubescent. These kids are not teenagers. So the kids are like laughing to themselves, like giggling and trying to keep it down, keep the poker face. And they're like, yeah, we got supercomputers over here. And the guys are like, okay, that's weird. Like, what do they look like? And so the kids start describing these monster computers with the big fucking reel-to-reels, the old tape drives and whatnot, which ENIAC, like the first computer that fucking took up an entire, like several grocery store spaces. And so they're just like, yeah, we got a little mini supercomputer here. And they're like, how, so are you kids in some kind of like weird program? Like, why, how do you do it? Like, tell us more. So the kids are just like making the story up on the fly as they go. It's just all improvisational. It's all fucking improv. So then, in the middle of the conversation, whilst explaining themselves, the red herring, giving these guys some fucking fake ass fallacious story, in the middle of their presentation, the kids, there's something, they're just like, nah, man, there's something about this. Hang up the phone. So they hang up the fucking phone. And there's this feeling among them, they're spooked. Because though they were leading these dudes on, they're like, man, there's something about this conversation that we had. These dudes, they're on to us. The kids, they get this sense that these system controllers are on to them. This is part 1 of the explanation. Check back in for part 2.